Hi, everybody. This is Dr. Gregory, and we are in week 5 of Psych 143. And this week, we're going to look at the relationship between leaders and followers. Now, we've come off a week of power, and we're midway through the course. As I encounter these first 4 weeks and leadership, I'm constantly reassessing my views of leadership. They're always changing and evolving for me. How we lead others, how we demonstrate values in the organizational culture, how leaders deal with conflict and sometimes dysfunction. I always am rethinking my perspectives. And as I read the news of business leaders and political leaders and others, I'm struck by how the elements we've studied so far come into play. What makes a good leader a good leader? And what goes on inside the minds of leaders and followers? Question: how do leaders impact followers? And vice versa. And why is this relationship so important? When we look at research about leadership prior to the 1990s, we didn't focus much on followers. Researchers were given a focus more on the leader and less on the follower, gave very little attention to them. And it was because back in that time, leaders often thought followers were, this nameless subservient mass. But if we only look at leaders, we're only looking at half of the equation. The relationship is the focus. If it's bad enough to ignore followers, there is also a pejorative view of followers that exist. So when we've characterized leaders in the past, we always use all these terms such as noble, admirable, strong, who we want to aspire to. I want to be like that person because that's a great leader. We don't see the same things with followers. With followers, research shows them as subservient, lower second class, cogs in the wheel of industry, easily replaceable, less important, low power. You don't hear high school and college students stating, boy, when I grow up, I want to be a follower. So let's see if we can shift this play with the old view and shift it a little bit into a newer view. It's important because it's not accurate. We seem to be wanting to negate the power of followers. And if we do that, we limit our relational aspect of leaders and followers working together and the nature of leadership where everyone plays both roles. Remember, we talked about that earlier. You can be a leader in one moment and a follower in the next. Well, you can't go from noble and admirable to a cog in the wheel of industry, can you? No. So we need to start looking at these not on an equal power stance, but more as a relationship, an interrelationship between these two sets of individuals. When we turn our backs to relationships between leaders and followers, the leader who doesn't pay attention to the nature and quality of interactions with their followers' needs, they're probably going to run into trouble. You just can't ignore them, and they aren't just robots. Studies show how impactful, thoughtful leaders can be when they tune into how their influence addresses others. We saw this in EI, and we talked about a couple of that we talked about a couple of weeks ago. Understanding the followers' intuitive needs, or asking them, what is it that they need? What is it they want? When do they become inspired by you or uninspired by you? When we start thinking and asking those types of questions, we start looking then further into what are the strengths and the weaknesses of our subordinates. Look beyond the domain knowledge. What are the strengths of our subordinates? And where can we influence positively through relationships that influence with those around us? Now, the articles this week talks about what drives a follower. Spoiler alert. One thing we have in common with leaders is self-interest. Leaders have a self-interest, and so do followers. And it drives both through self-interest, creating that service to others. More specifically, followers have different motives. Followers' needs for safety, security, simplicity, order, and vision, and most of all, a sense of belonging. Leaders and leadership overlaps some of these in many ways, but leaders also have some additional needs. Leaders need to pay attention to these needs and how they are highlighted in certain situations. So good leaders pay attention to what are the needs of followers? What drives them in your sphere of work or even in home? What drives you as a follower? What are you looking for to be a good follower? As a leader, think about whether you can listen well and tune into needs. Communication is a very active listening skill, and it's not an easy skill. You have to work at it. And can you see where listening and tuning into the needs of others, you can see how that relationship or that reciprocity of give and take comes along? So how can you help followers be more effective? And how, more importantly, can a follower help leaders be effective? Well, they can use feedback on what they need to be effective. So followers need to have an arena of safety and security where they can state clearly what their needs are in order to be effective for their leader. And finally, how do you approach followers as leaders? What do you think of a follower? I ask you to invite yourself and stay open to that idea, how you approach followers as a leader. Lean into this. Lean into your role as a leader and pay particular attention to those who you lead. I look forward to this week to seeing all of your discussions and perceptions on this. I think this is one of the more eye-opening areas of leadership. Take care.